Just one other example is in 1887, there were only 4 companies in California exploring for oil. And one of them was run by 2 men named Lyman Stewart and Wallace Hardison, who had met in Pennsylvania, had come to California to look for oil, but had not had much success. At that point, they had borrowed more than $183,000, and they still had not struck oil. And they were at their wits' end. And they decided to go see Isaias. And I just want to read to you a letter from that Lyman Stewart wrote a couple years later about that experience. We owed I.W. Hellman all that we dared to owe him, but we saw him and told him that Hardison and Stewart Company needed $20,000. He replied, "There are millionaires in this town that I won't lend another dollar to because they are doing nothing to benefit the community. But you are doing something to develop the resources of the county. Let me see your statement." That made us tremble. We were then at the high water mark of our liabilities, and our statement showed we owed $183,000. Mr. Hellman looked at the statement and said, "Draw your checks for $10,000 more, and I will order them paid." He did not ask for any collateral. The men eventually discovered oil. Their company today is known as Unocal. So, probably Hellman's most enduring legacy is Wells Fargo Bank. I mean, that is certainly the institution that has had the longest history in the state of California, and that continues today to be a very important financial institution, now not just in California, but throughout the country. Before 1905, Wells Fargo was better known for its express company than its banking company. It had been started in 1852 in San Francisco as a letter delivery service, think of Pony Express, and a stagecoach service. It brought passengers all over the West. It made huge sums delivering packages, passengers, and freight, in large part because it did it more efficiently than the United States government. By 1901, the Southern Pacific Railroad owned the majority of the shares or a third of the shares of Wells Fargo Express. And a man named Edward Harriman bought Southern Pacific Railroad. And when he looked at the Wells Fargo asset, he saw it was a cash machine. He wanted that express business and its profits, which he could roll back into the railroad. But he looked at the bank and he saw an underperforming asset. The bank had about $6 million in assets, but it wasn't really lending out a lot of money. That money was not earning any money. So Harriman, who'd done business with Hellman down in Los Angeles, asked Hellman to buy the bank. So in 1905, Hellman merged the Nevada Bank with the Wells Fargo Bank to create a financial powerhouse with more than $15 million in assets. The merger happened right before the San Francisco earthquake. And when the earthquake came, Hellman and Wells Fargo played a really large role, once again sort of rationalizing the financial system in a destructive time. And they also then went on to refinance the reconstruction of the city. Just one example of how amazing that merger was and Hellman was. In 1906, Wells Fargo Bank paid out a 12% dividend, which was like twice as much as what was usually paid out. So it was a wonderful partnership. And under Hellman's leadership, Wells Fargo Bank became one of the largest banks on the Pacific Coast. And by that time, Hellman had also ascended to be the position of being considered the West Coast's most influential financier. Newspapers used to write about him, calling him the richest Jew in the West. And they said, oh, he's got $40 million, which was really an overstatement. I mean, he was a wealthy man, but he didn't have that much money. But he sat on the board, or he was president, of 18 financial institutions in the West, and he controlled more than $100 million in capital at that time. So he was extraordinarily powerful, and he used that capital to invest in a variety of businesses. So I keep forgetting my slides. This was the Nevada Bank, and it also became Wells Fargo Bank. Next one. So this is the building after the San Francisco earthquake. The earthquake did not damage a lot of the buildings, but the fire really did. And actually, the Wells Fargo Bank was dynamited the afternoon of April 18th, as you can see how everything fell down. This is Hellman looking like a banker. And, okay, next one. Okay, so, that's great. So once again, I'm just going to go back to why I think I.W. Hellman is important. Of course, he is related to me, and that really helped a lot in the course of this research, because I never got bored. I always wanted to know. And there were so many great little strings of research that I followed. It was really, really fun. And as I said, I got to meet so many wonderful family members who lent me diaries and letters and things like that. But why Hellman is important is, once again, I just want to say, his story in the book really talks about the Jewish contribution to California. It really shows this really crazy financial time. I mean, I know we're having a hard time financially now, but there are many more systems in place to sort of buffer people from the vicissitudes of finance. And he just had a lot of business savvy. And it's, you know, if you buy the book, you'll get to read about all the other people that he invested in, and all the other, you know, there were embezzlements and stagecoach robberies and lots of really fun tidbits. He lived in a really exciting time. So my book is coming out in November. It's called Towers of Gold, How One Jewish Immigrant Named Isaiah Hellman Created California. And I hope you remember it and buy it at that time. So thank you.